The town of Hollow Bend sat at the edge of a dark pine forest, far from any city lights. Travelers passing through always stopped at one place, the Cedarwood Inn. It stood alone on a quiet road, its windows glowing like warm eyes in the night. The owner, a soft-spoken man named Arthur Kessler, greeted every guest with a wide smile and a cup of hot cider. He knew each traveler's name before they even introduced themselves. He remembered their stories, their fears, their reasons for passing through. Guests often said the inn felt like home, safer than any hotel they'd stayed in before. But not everyone who checked in to the Cedarwood Inn checked out. Over 12 years, more than a dozen travelers vanished after staying there. Truck drivers, hikers, a young couple on their honeymoon, a retired teacher driving cross-country alone. Each time, local police wrote it off as people simply moving on, choosing not to say goodbye. Arthur always had an answer ready. They left before sunrise, he'd say, shrugging kindly, didn't want to wake anyone up. The town believed him. Why wouldn't they? He volunteered at the church. He donated blankets every winter. He was, by every appearance, the gentlest man in Hollow Bend. What no one knew was that beneath the inn's cheerful lobby and cozy guest rooms, Arthur kept a private register, one he never showed to guests, and one that recorded far more than names and check-in times. It recorded endings. Arthur's guest book looked ordinary at first glance. Leather-bound, slightly worn, sitting on the reception desk for every visitor to sign. But investigators would later discover it held 2 layers of ink. The visible names, written in blue, were the polite entries any innkeeper collects. Beneath them, in a fainter gray pencil, only visible under certain light, were dates, initials, and strange symbols that meant nothing to an outsider. Arthur had a ritual. Each night, after guests fell asleep, he walked the halls carrying a small oil lamp. He said it was for checking the fire exits. In truth, he was choosing. He never picked guests who had family waiting nearby or co-workers expecting a call. He chose the lonely ones, people who had told him over cider and conversation that no one would miss them for weeks. A trucker between jobs, a backpacker who'd cut ties with his family, a widow starting over in a new state. Arthur listened carefully during check-in small talk, memorizing every detail that made someone forgettable to the world outside. Then he waited, sometimes for days, letting his chosen guest relax completely before anything happened. The inn had a cellar, accessible only through a locked door behind the kitchen pantry. Staff were told it was for wine storage. None of them ever asked to see inside. Arthur made sure of that, through charm, through generosity, and, when necessary, through quiet threats disguised as friendly warnings. In the autumn of the 11th year, a hiker named Rosa Delgado checked in to the Cedarwood Inn after getting lost on a trail nearby. She was tired, soaked from rain, and grateful for a warm bed. Arthur greeted her with his usual kindness, offering dry clothes and a private room at no extra charge. But Rosa was different from Arthur's usual guests. She had texted her sister the exact name and address of the inn before her phone died, a habit she'd picked up after years of solo travel safety training. Arthur didn't know this. That night, Rosa awoke to the sound of a key turning slowly in her door. She'd locked it, but the lock was old and Arthur kept spare keys to every room. Through a crack in the door, she saw the glow of his lamp in the hallway, moving with unusual purpose. Something about the silence felt wrong. Instead of panicking, Rosa quietly opened her window and climbed on to the inn's sloped roof, then dropped into the bushes below. She ran barefoot through the forest for nearly 2 miles before reaching a gas station. When she told the police what she'd seen, they were skeptical at first. Arthur Kessler was a respected man in Hollow Bend, but Rosa's sister confirmed the text message, and a young officer named Diane Marsh decided the story deserved a closer look than her colleagues wanted to give it. Officer Marsh requested a warrant to search the Cedarwood Inn, but the local judge, a longtime friend of Arthur's, denied it twice, calling the request an overreaction to a scared hiker's imagination. Marsh didn't give up. She spent weeks quietly gathering old missing person reports, noticing that nearly every case traced back to the same stay at the same inn. When she finally secured a warrant from a judge in the next county, investigators arrived at the inn on a cold December morning. Arthur greeted them at the door with the same calm smile he gave every guest, offering coffee as if this were an ordinary visit. Behind the locked cellar door, they found the wine racks Arthur had described to his staff. But behind those racks was a second wall, slightly hollow when tapped. Cadaver dogs reacted immediately. Digging beneath the cellar floor, investigators uncovered the remains of 9 people, each wrapped carefully in blankets from the inn's linen closet. Arthur, it turned out, had never simply buried his victims. He had preserved small items from each of them, a watch, a hair clip, a wedding ring, kept in a wooden box like trophies of hospitality gone monstrous. Arthur didn't resist arrest. He simply asked the officers if they'd like something warm to drink before they left. His calmness unsettled even the most experienced detectives on the scene. Arthur Kessler's trial became the most talked-about case in the state's history. Prosecutors described a man who used comfort as a weapon, turning kindness into a trap over more than a decade. Survivors and victims' families packed the courtroom every day, many hearing each other's stories for the first time. Rosa Delgado testified for nearly 3 hours, describing the sound of that key turning in the dark. Her testimony, combined with the physical evidence from the cellar, sealed the case beyond any reasonable doubt. When asked by the judge if he had anything to say, Arthur simply replied that he had only ever wanted his guests to feel like they belonged somewhere. He showed no remorse, no anger, nothing but the same unsettling calm he'd shown investigators on the day of his arrest. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. The Cedarwood Inn was demolished the following spring, and the town of Hollow Bend planted a memorial garden where the cellar once stood, with 9 stone markers for the victims whose names could finally be spoken. Officer Diane Marsh, who had risked her career to pursue the case, later said the hardest part wasn't catching Arthur. It was realizing how many people had trusted him completely, right up until the moment they disappeared. To this day, no one knows exactly how many guests truly never left. Arthur Kessler trusted no one, suspected him, until one guest got away. If this story kept you watching till the end, subscribe now. Next week's case is even darker. Comment below, would you have checked in to the Cedarwood Inn?